Hi, Mike here. Today's lullaby is a tribute to the King, King Diamond, and his legendary album, Them. So sit back and enjoy the dark tale of the House of Amon. Look, the old bitch is back. Finally, we'll get some company again. The attic room has been locked up for so long. Just like the old bitch herself. She's on time though. Why? That silly wheelchair. She's pretending as always. But she does make a good cup of tea. It has been several years since Grandma had been living with us. Mother said that she had been away on a long vacation. I was only 10 years old, but I knew deep down this was a lie. Around 2 years ago, my grandpa died in a tragic accident. My mother would not tell us what happened to my grandfather, and always she went a pale white shade each time I asked her about my grandfather. Today was the day Grandma was coming home from her vacation. Mother was busy all day cleaning and trying to tidy up the house before Grandma came home. A bright yellow taxi arrived outside the house. I could see it from the window. The driver got out and pulled out a wheelchair from the back, and he helped my grandma into it. Mother looked worried and turned to my sister Missy and myself and said, "Oh my God, she's here. Missy, listen to what Mother says. Now you be good to Grandma, and remember, she's been away on a long vacation. That goes for you too, King, and stop playing that thing. Answer the door." I rushed to the door and I pulled it open to see my grandma sitting in the wheelchair. Her grey curls rested on her head. Thick glasses hid her grey eyes, and she looked so very frail. I was happy to have her home, and so were they. Looking at my grandma, I said to her, "Grandma, welcome home. You have been gone for far too long. Is this a dream? Are you really back?" My grandmother smiled at me. It was a warm smile. I quickly went behind a chair and wheeled her inside. She was quiet, not speaking any words, just smiling. "Let me help you, Grandma. Help you out of the chair." Reaching down, I grabbed her hands and pulled her up. She was very light, and she seemed to float out of the chair. The sun had set in the distance, and the silvery moon was casting its light over the house. It shined through the window, and it made Grandma's hair look like it was flecked with silver shards. Looking at Grandma excitedly, I said to her that we were going to repaint the front door to make the house perfect for her, but I was too little to do it for her before she got home. Grandma was silent. I clung to her arm, not wanting to let her go. "Grandma, we've prepared your room for you in the attic. We didn't put in a bed, only the rocking chair. And Missy, she found the tea point you wanted. It is in there too." I led her to the attic and to her room. I could hear them whispering. They were excited she was finally home. "Grandma, there is someone waiting for you in the attic. They have been singing lullabies every night while they waited for you. How was your holiday? I missed you. But I am lucky I have had them by my side." "Grandma, who are they?" For the first time, my grandma looked at me and she said with a harsh tone, "Never mind who they are, you dirty little brat. Now let us go inside. Something is on their mind. They are still alive. Can you feel their eyes?" It was late when I awoke from my slumber. There was something happening in the house. I could hear unknown voices laughing in the night air. I thought I could hear my grandma's voice as well. It was louder than the others, and it was coming from the room next to mine. I crept out of my bed my feet pressing against the cold wooden floor. As quietly as I could, I snuck out of my room and I pressed my eye against the keyhole to my grandma's room. I could not believe what I saw. She was speaking to no one. There were cups rising into the air and they emptied their contents onto the floor with a soft splash. The door suddenly flew open and I fell forward, stumbling to the floor. My grandma looked at me and she smiled. "Do come in, my little friend." Missy and Mother were sleeping downstairs. How could they not hear this noise? Grandma motioned for me to sit in her rocking chair. I climbed into it. The cushion was soft, and I settled into it very easily. Mother and Missy would be quite surprised if they saw me sitting in Grandma's chair. My grandmother looked at me, and she looked me deep in the eyes, and she said, "Look at me deep in the eyes, and you'll forget what you saw here tonight. I will let you in a secret of this house, the secret of Amon. That's what we call this house. Now, I want you to go back to bed and go back to sleep. Go back to sleep, my dear." With that, my grandma led me to the door and ushered me through. Her final words to me that night were, "Now go back to sleep, King." It has been a few days since Grandma returned home. She's been locked in her room. I've knocked a couple of times and she's always told me to go away and not bother her. I know she's been talking to them. I can hear them every night. When the end of the school week came around, Mother tucked me into bed and turned out my light. I was almost asleep and there was a soft knock on my door. It was Grandma and she was speaking to me through the door. Her raspy voice sounded hoarse, like she'd been talking for far too long. "Wake up, King. Come with me." I opened the door and Grandma held out her hand. I took it. Her hand felt warm and soft. She led me into her room and there was Mother. She was sitting in Grandmother's rocking chair. "Even your mother is present. We made her sleep in my rocking chair," she chuckled. "Why is Mother here?" I wanted to ask. I was feeling really scared and my stomach was in knots. My grandmother walked towards Mother and then I saw her pull a knife out from her dress. It was a small knife made of silver with fine engravings carved into it. They seemed to look like Egyptian characters, but I was unsure. It was dark and I couldn't make it out properly. She lifted up Mother's hand and dragged the knife against her tiny hand. A trickle of blood ran out down her palm and it dripped into Grandmother's teapot. As it ran into the pot, I heard them laugh and howl in happiness. A bit of this in a cup of tea is what it takes to set them free. You will hear them telling stories from far beyond this earth. My grandmother handed me a cup of tea, and at first I didn't want to drink it, but she insisted and she pushed the cup to my lips. Opening my mouth, I reluctantly started to drink. It was sweet and delicious. I'd never tasted anything like it before. I wanted to drink as much tea as I could fit into my belly. If I'm dreaming, I never want to leave. Mother, she didn't exist to me anymore. Only the paradise that was in my mind. I listened to their stories and the warmth that came from them. I did not want to leave, and I wanted to learn all their secrets. Nothing mattered anymore. I only wanted to be with them. We'd been drinking tea every night for the last few days. It was a never-ending party. Yesterday, Mother was complaining she was feeling weak and dizzy. I started to notice that she was getting paler and paler by the day. This morning, Mother could not get out of bed. She seemed like she was almost dead. Mother was deep, deep in Grandma's spell, and we consumed her blood so we could talk with them. But little did we know that tonight would be the last time that we would drink Grandma's bloody tea. Missy came into the room and she took my hand and led me away from them. It pained me to leave. I wanted to stay. I wanted to listen to what they were saying. I wanted to hear the stories from the other world. Mother was barely conscious now, but I simply just didn't care. I just wanted to drink more tea. Missy led me to the phone and gave it to me. She was begging me to call someone to come help Mother. I looked at her in disgust, and I ripped the phone from the wall and started to walk away. Nothing mattered to me anymore. Not Mother, not Missy, just them and drinking the tea. Missy was crying behind me. She was wailing and begging for help. Please, brother, please, help me. And the last thing that Missy said to me as I walked away was, I hate you. I was waiting patiently for tea time. The time was dragging by so slowly. How long until I could drink tea again? Looking down the hallway, I saw Mother. She was coming up the stairs. She was swaying back and forth like a drunk person. Her eyes were unfocused, but somehow she managed to make her way to Grandma's room. I knew Grandma. She'd sent them to go and bring Mother up for the tea party. It was almost time to drink the tea again. Upon entering Grandma's room, we started the tea ceremony with Mother in the rocking chair. They began telling us stories from beyond, and I was close to feeling ecstasy. Grandma rose and she walked to the door, pulling it open. There was Missy, standing there with tears running down her face. Missy was staring at Mother sitting in the rocking chair, and Missy screamed, "What have you done? What are you doing to Ma?" I heard Grandma say, as she was looking at Missy, "We better get rid of her. She's too young anyway. Bye-bye, Missy. Be gone forever." The beautiful fireplace in the kitchen will do. I do not know when Grandma grabbed Missy, but she was struggling to break free away from her grasp. "No, Grandma, please let me be. No, Grandma, please. Ah, Grandma, you're hurting me." Missy broke free of Grandma's grip and snatched up the teapot, and she screamed as loud as she possibly could. "Don't touch me, or I'll break it. I've got the teapot, your beloved teapot. I'll do it anyway." Missy flung the teapot as hard as she could. It hit the floor. Shards of the teapot exploded everywhere. The tea sprayed all over the floor, spreading out like the incoming tide. Now I heard their voices scream. It was like a demon growling. "Die!" She broke Amon. "Amon, die!" The teacups fell to the floor, and Grandma stood perfectly still, not moving, not saying a word. Missy screamed again as she was dragged down the stairs by unseen hands. As she was pulled from the room, my mind was all hazy. All I could do was wave goodbye. Looking at Grandma, I asked, "Will I ever see Missy again?" "Bye-bye, Missy. Please don't be scared." I knew I had to escape from Grandma's room. I stumbled out of her room and down the stairs. The stairs seemed to be moving up to meet my feet. Somehow, I made it down. Throwing myself through the front door, I managed to get outside. The snow had dusted the ground with a fine white powder. I started to fight control for my mind. I had to get my thoughts back from them. With the teapot broken, I realized their power had been weakened, and it was even less outside. My knees buckled under me, and I collapsed into the snow. Turning my head, I looked through the cellar window. Things were moving, and they looked like they were searching for something, and I didn't know what they wanted or what was happening. Suddenly, a big axe appeared. It was flying through the air. They looked like they had found what they were looking for. The axe flew out the cellar doors and went up the stairs to the kitchen. I tried to get up, but I couldn't move. My head felt fuzzy, and I could not think. My eyes got heavy, and they closed. The next thing I remember is I was looking back at the house, and there was smoke coming from the chimney. I remember Grandma saying something about oh God no. Pushing my hands into the snow, I launched myself up and I ran to the kitchen. Fire was burning in front of it. It was Missy's dress. It was still smouldering. Finally, the spell of Amon was broken. Poor sweet Missy. What did they do? How did they do this to her? My mind and body finally came back together, and I felt whole. My rage, it became lit, and I went back to my grandma's room. I needed to see if she was still there. Climbing the stairs, I approached her room. Looking through the door, Grandma was there. She was waiting for me, leaning on her cane. Oh God, I hate that bitch. I knew that she'd be there. She was waiting for me, and she wore a sick, twisted smile on her face. "Don't be a fool, King," she said to me, her eyes boring into me. As she stared at me, I managed to convince her that I was feeling fine, and I forced my mind to hide its rage. I knew it was important not to show any emotions, or she would catch on to my plan. As I spoke to her, I managed to convince her to come outside, so we could cleanse ourselves in the silver moonlight, so we could be pure for them. I led her down into the darkness. She did not suspect what was to come. We walked through the door, and I led her some distance from the house, so their influence would be less, and they couldn't interfere. I knew she was unprotected by them. I snatched her cane out of her hand and pushed her to the ground. With all my rage built up, I screamed at her, "No way you're going to escape. Now I've got you. Here you will pay for your deeds. Your sick mind will now come to an end." Grandma laughed at me, and she told me to stop it. This time, it was my turn to laugh at her. I hefted the cane in my hand and I struck her in the head. The wound opened up, blood trickled down her face, and she was still laughing at me. So I hit her again and again until she stopped laughing. Grandmother died all alone in the dark. I looked at my trembling hands. They were covered in her blood. I glanced back at the house and I could feel them. I knew they were waiting for me inside. They wanted revenge for killing my grandmother. But I turned and I ran from the house. I could feel their eyes on me as I fled. Eventually, I couldn't run any further, and I felt my mind going blank, and I collapsed. As my head hit the ground, something inside it broke, and I knew I would never be the same again. I'd been driven to the brink of insanity by them. As I lay unconscious, I could hear them. They were whispering in my ear. Their voices were demanding that I go home. They were begging, pleading, and demanding. "King, we are stronger than you. You must return to the house. You must return to the house of Amon." Eventually, the morning came, and so did the police. They were asking questions. They could see that I was disturbed by the events of the previous night, so they called for a psychiatrist to come. Sitting in the ambulance, I could hear them. They were singing. It was their Twilight Symphony. Their singing was sweet and beautiful. It was trying to lure me back inside the house. The police could not find a trace of Missy. She was gone. As for Grandma, they found her bloody and beaten body. I do not remember the details of what happened exactly. It was a blur. Dr. Landau came. He was dressed in a fine suit, and he looked like he was rather out of place. He should have been in a business meeting instead of being a doctor. He questioned me and asked me why I did it. I did what I did, and I'm glad I did, because I could have been the next in line, I replied, with no emotion. He asked me about Missy, but how could I ever explain what happened? You would think that I'm quite mad. Dr. Landau, he left, and he went to speak to the police further, and I resolved I would tell him the truth. Surely he would help me, and he would help Mother. When he returned, he sat next to me. I proceeded to tell him everything that happened, from the time Grandma came home to what happened to Missy. He looked at me, and an evil smile came across his face, and he whispered in my ear, "Are you mad? Or are you just insane?" Looking at the ambulance driver, he said, "You can take him away. This boy has lost his mind." The nurses came and grabbed me, pushing me down into the gurney. They strapped my wrists down. I screamed at them, "Mother! Where is my mother? Mother, help me! Please, Mother!" I was taken to an asylum that day, and I was kept there for 9 years. I never saw my mother. She never came to see me, not even once. She must hate me for what I did to her, for what Grandmother did to her. Dr. Landau, he was my psychiatrist, and he treated me for those 9 long years. He would not tell me anything about my mother. I asked, and he wouldn't tell me. He took some kind of sick pleasure in mentally torturing me. But today, I am free. I am finally free. And Grandma, I'm coming home. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the lullaby of King Diamond and the story of the House of Amon. If you like my content, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you'd like to hear more dark, scary, twisted tales, please leave me a comment down below. Also, I'm looking for other talented authors who would like to share their horrific tales with me. If you have a story, please email me at the email in the description down below, and maybe your story will appear on the site. And remember, keep watching for what's in the dark.